welcome back for another reading of The Way Back to Mayberry. Today's chapter is number 12, and the title is Good Luck. And the episode of the Andy Griffith Show is titled The Jinx. And the scripture reading, is from Psalm 20, verse 7. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. I think we've all known a Henry Bennett at one time or another. In fact, sometimes I think I am Henry Bennett. Henry is a nice enough gentleman in Mayberry, but it seems that wherever Henry goes, bad luck follows. The jinx discussion starts in Floyd's barber shop when Barney blames his loss at checkers on the fact that Henry is standing over his shoulder. Floyd also chimes in saying that his son missed a fly ball at a recent baseball game right after Henry returned a foul ball. Andy reminds Floyd that his son missed the only ball hit to him during the entire game. At this point, Andy decides to put an end to the jinx talk by inviting Henry to join him and Barney in the opening day fishing sweepstakes. Barney and Andy have won the sweepstakes for the past few years, so this is a perfect opportunity to dispel any rumors that Henry is a jinx. Barney is horrified that Henry will be in their boat to ward off any bad luck. Barney consults his book of lucky charms and chants. Barney even rubs Opie's head because he reads that rubbing the head of a red-haired boy is lucky. The day of the fishing sweepstakes arrives, and Andy, Barney, and Henry set out in the boat together. Barney still insists that they are doomed, and he continues his attempts to combat Henry's bad luck by saying more chants and rubbing a rabbit's foot. Finally, Andy hooks a big one. Henry is ecstatic that his string of bad luck is over, but suddenly the boat springs a leak. The boat sinks, and so does Henry's hopes that his bad luck is gone. After the disaster at the fishing hole, Henry actually believes that he is a jinx. Furthermore, Henry believes that the best thing he can do is leave town. Almost in tears, he arrives at the barber shop to tell the boys that he doesn't want to be held responsible for all the bad things that happen in Mayberry. After Henry leaves, the shop is silent. Floyd, Barney, and the rest of the boys realize what they have done with all the talk about bad luck and jinxes. Andy is ashamed of their behavior and asks if they really believe Henry is a jinx, enough so that they actually want him to leave town. Barney and Floyd come to their senses and admit that they don't really believe Henry is a jinx. They know that the bad things that happened were just coincidental, but the fact remains that they still said some very hurtful things to Henry. Only Henry's sudden announcement makes them stop long enough to realize what they were doing. Fortunately, it's not too late. The citizens of Mayberry want Henry to stay so badly that they rig a door prize at the Saturday night dance just so Henry will win and realize that his luck has changed. Henry almost botches the drawing by selecting the hat size instead of the winning number, that they were all winning numbers. But the townspeople give the prize to Henry anyway. Henry, reminded that he is indeed a fortunate man to have so many friends who care about him, decides to stay put in Mayberry. Barney is in rare form in this episode. A memorable scene takes place in the boat when he comes up with some hilarious chants to ward off bad luck. It makes me consider all the things in our lives that we attribute to luck. I wonder, are we really that superstitious? I don't think there is anything wrong with wishing someone good luck, but do we really attribute our success to luck? Or is our faith seated in something deeper? I will always be indebted to my cousin, Mark Harless, who reintroduced me to the Andy Griffith Show while I was attending college. Mark has a very outgoing personality and a vivid imagination. One might even say he is a little superstitious. As we both became young professionals, we began to travel with our respective companies. One day we were talking about the adventures and perils of air travel, and Mark shared with me a tradition he always performed when entering an aircraft. He said he would always touch the exterior of the plane as he entered the door for good luck. Well, that sounded good to me. After all, Mark had never been in a serious aircraft incident, so it couldn't hurt. As my travel schedule increased, I began to find myself touching the exterior of the plane every time I went on board. I must have made a little more ceremony of it than just a casual touch, because on one occasion I had a fellow passenger ask me why I touched the plane like that. Feeling a little embarrassed, I explained that it was good luck. He looked at me, thought for a minute, then went back and touched the plane himself. I continued this practice for quite a while and didn't think much about it. My rule was, if I was going to get on a plane, I was going to touch the outside before I got on. My good luck insurance seemed to work pretty well until I made a trip to Washington, D.C. on May 8, 1995. The flight from Atlanta to D.C. began just fine. I was in a great mood because I was able to upgrade to first class with a frequent flyer coupon. I was seated comfortably with my real, not styrofoam, coffee cup and was going over my notes for a briefing that I had later in the day. Everything was quiet and smooth until, boom! After the boom, the whole plane shuddered violently and immediately began to lose altitude. The fasten seatbelt sign came on, and the flight attendants turned very serious and began securing the cabin. At that point, my briefing and nice cup of coffee seemed very unimportant. After a few minutes, the captain came on the radio. Let me mention that when the captain begins with, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an update on the situation," it doesn't instill a lot of confidence. Apparently, the right engine had literally exploded. The good news, if there is such a thing with an engine explosion, was that the engine was still intact and had been shut down safely, and there was no fire. I'm a bit of an aviation buff, so I knew that the aircraft we were on was a Boeing 757. I also knew that the Boeing 757 had two engines. One of our engines was now dead. We all hoped that the engine problem was not contagious. The captain told us that we were making a rapid descent to make an emergency landing somewhere in North Carolina. That was the last we heard from him during the flight. The time it took the plane to go from 33,000 feet to the airport was about 20 minutes, the longest 20 minutes of my life. During that time, my priorities changed drastically. I was no longer worried about work or sitting in first class. I wasn't concerned if my luggage would make it or if the hotel was going to be nice. I also wasn't trying to think of good luck charms or chants that I could say to get us out of this mess. The fact that I had touched this plane for good luck before boarding was a distant memory. I was painfully aware that I had no control of the situation at all. It probably comes as no surprise that I used my 20 minutes to pray, and I'm sure that most of the other passengers and flight crew did so as well. The entire cabin was completely quiet. The conversation and laughter of just a few minutes ago had been replaced with blank stares out the window or heads slightly bowed. I prayed for the pilot, I prayed for the aircraft, and I prayed that God would see all of us through this crisis. At that moment, I realized just how much I relied on God for everything. Nothing else was important. All the trivial things that make up our lives meant nothing. I knew that God and God alone had the power to protect us. As we approached the runway, I began to have a little more hope. The left engine showed no signs of letting up, and the captain seemed to have good control of the plane. We hit the ground pretty hard, but we made it in one piece. Without the right engine's thrust reversal, the captain did have a little trouble stopping the plane, but we did come to a stop before the end of the runway. It was an eerie sight to see all the fire engines and rescue vehicles lined up on the runway, just in case the landing hadn't turned out so well. Once we were on the ground, all the passengers let out a cheer and applauded. The crisis was over, and we were all safe. I found it ironic that soon these same thankful people would be in line at the ticket counter griping to the agents to get them to D.C. and to get them there now. As I was walking through the airport food court, I noticed the captain of our flight sitting alone at a table with a cup of coffee. I walked up and could tell he was still a little shaken. I thanked him again for getting us down safely, and he simply replied, "Yeah, we were lucky out there today." Funny, at that point, luck was the farthest thing from my mind as to why we made it safely to the airport that day. Thank you for reading along, and I will see you next week.